Welcome to Hexes, Haunts, and Howls. I'm your host, Cupcake. This is a podcast where we explore true encounters, folklore, and the things that linger in the dark long after stories end. Tonight's episode is an extended Appalachian special. This is not a fast episode. It's not meant to be, because the subject we're discussing doesn't rush. It watches. It waits. It leaves most people with just enough fear to make sure they never come back. Across Appalachia, there are places locals avoid without explanation. Hollows without trails, ridges without names, caves and mine openings that don't appear on maps. When asked why, the answers are vague. Stories trail off, warnings come quiet, and sometimes people simply say nothing at all. Tonight, we're talking about crawlers. What they are said to be, how they behave, why encounters escalate slowly, and why most people leave before anything worse can happen. If you're listening alone, if you're driving through the mountains, or if the woods outside your window feel a little close tonight, this may be an episode you want to finish with the lights on. Let's begin. They noticed the first night because the woods went quiet too fast. Not the normal kind of quiet, the kind where insects fade and come back again. This was different. Everything stopped at once. No crickets, no frogs. Even the creek below the ridge seemed to swallow itself. They were camped deep in Appalachia, far from any marked trail. No cell service, no nearby roads, the kind of place people don't stumble into by accident. At first, it sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate, not circling the camp, just pacing the edge of the campfire. They called out once, just to break the tension. Nothing answered. Then something moved closer. Not rushing, not hiding, just closer. When the voice came, it didn't come from the dark. It came from the tree line. It said their name, perfectly. Same tone, same cadence. Even the slight hesitation the voice always had at the end. They didn't answer. That's when it repeated the name again. Closer this time. By the third time, they could tell something was wrong. Not because the voice itself, but because of how it stopped. Too abruptly. Like a recording cut mid-word. They stayed in the tent until morning. Didn't sleep, didn't speak, didn't move. At dawn, they found the tracks. Long, bare, too narrow to be human. They led around the campsite, not toward it, around it, like something had been watching all night. They packed up and left that morning. Didn't go back for forgotten gear. Didn't look behind them. They didn't report it. Most people don't. Because in Appalachia, when something watches you that closely, you don't want to know what happens if it decides you will notice too much. Before the name crawler ever existed, Appalachia already knew the idea. People here didn't describe them with a single word. They described experiences. Something pale, something thin, something that moved wrong. Stories like this don't show up neatly in old folklore books. They survive in warnings, in half-finished sentences, and in places people stop going without explanation. In Appalachian communities, especially in rural mountain areas, stories weren't written down. They were passed quietly, usually after someone had already learned the hard way. Long before modern sightings, there were references to things living beneath the mountains. Not animals, not spirits in the traditional sense, but something between. Early settlers spoke about pale figures near camp mouths, shapes seen crawling low along ridges at dusk, creatures mistaken for injured people until they stood up. These weren't campfire stories meant to scare children. They were explanations of why certain areas are avoided. Certain hollows were said to take people's nerves. Certain caves were sealed not because they collapsed, but because no one wanted to go back inside. Appalachia is riddled with natural cave systems, abandoned coal mines, sinkholes, and unmapped tunnels. Some go back hundreds of years. Some were never officially recorded. Miners told stories of hearing movement where no one should be, tools being shifted, footsteps that didn't echo like boots, and shapes watching from side tunnels. Sometimes men refused to go back underground. Not injured, not sick, just unwilling. In mountain communities, that kind of fear is taken seriously. Appalachian culture doesn't rush to name things. Naming something gives it shape. Acknowledging it gives it weight. Instead of labels, people said, something down there, that thing near the ridge, don't camp there again, or we're not going that way. Even today, older residents will change the subject rather than describe what they saw. Silence is part of the history. The term crawler didn't appear until recent decades. It came from people trying to describe a humanoid shape, moving primarily on all fours, with unnatural speed and flexibility, could stand upright when it wanted to. The name stuck, not because it explains them, but because it described the movement people remember most. Not walking, not running, crawling. What makes crawler history unsettling isn't how much it's changed. It's how little it has. Descriptions from decades apart often match. Pale or gray skin, emaciated appearance, long limbs, silent movement, and eyes that reflect light or don't blink at all. Witnesses often don't realize how similar their experiences are until much later, if they ever compare notes at all. Most don't. Appalachia provides exactly what these stories revolve around: isolation, darkness, depth, and distance from help. There are places here where sound doesn't travel correctly, where radio signals fail, where trails disappear. Places where something could exist for a very long time without being seen or documented. Not every story ends with an encounter. Some end with people leaving early, gear abandoned, campsites never reused, and property left vacant. In some cases, people simply stop going back. Appalachian history is full of places that don't have explanations, just patterns. Patterns of avoidance. There's a reason crawler history feels incomplete. People who see something unsettling don't usually become storytellers. They become quiet. They move. They avoid. And over time, the story becomes a warning without details, which might be the most Appalachian thing of all. To understand crawlers fully, history isn't enough, because whatever they are, they're still being seen, and their behavior hasn't softened with time. History tells us where crawlers have always been. Behavior tells us what they do once they know you're there. Crawlers aren't remembered for sudden attacks. They're remembered for what happened before anything physical ever occurs. Most encounters don't begin with fear. They begin with confusion. A sound that doesn't belong, movement that feels misplaced, a sense that something has shifted in the woods, but you can't explain how. That uncertainty is intentional. Phase 1. Observation. Nearly every report starts the same way. The witnesses feel watched, not briefly, not casually, persistently. People describe a pressure in the chest, the urge to turn around, or a feeling that something is just outside your field of vision. Dogs notice first. They stop exploring. They won't leave their owner's side. They stare into the trees without barking. Crawlers don't rush this stage. They wait until they're certain you're aware of something, even if you don't know what yet. Phase 2. Peripheral movement. Once awareness sets in, movement follows. Witnesses report pale shapes slipping between trees, limbs bending at unnatural angles, movement that's too low to be a deer, too fluid to be human, or a shape that disappears the moment it's focused on. This moment is never central. it stays just out of direct view, as if the goal isn't to be seen, but to be noticed. Phase 3, sound without source. Sound comes next. Footsteps are the most common, slow, measured, heavy enough to register, but never hurried. Sometimes it's breathing, sometimes clicking, tapping, or scraping. What makes this phase unsettling is placement. The sound comes from just beyond the firelight, directly behind the witness, the edge of a tent, or the side of a cabin wall. And when a light is turned towards it, the sound stops immediately. Phase 4, escalation over time. This is where Appalachia differs from many other regions. Crawlers here are persistent. Encounters don't end in one night. People often report activity continuing for several nights in a row, the crawler appearing closer each time, sounds repeating at the same hour, or the same location being targeted repeatedly. This isn't random, it's a pattern. Many witnesses leave before this phase completes. Those who don't describe regret. Phase 5, vocal mimicry. This is the behavior that causes the most long-term trauma. Crawlers are reported to mimic children crying, adults asking for help, familiar voices, the witness's name, or even the witness's own voice. The mimicry isn't perfect. There's always something wrong with it. Pauses in unnatural places, flat emotional tone, repetition of the same phrase, or slightly incorrect pronunciation. In Appalachia, mimicry often happens after the witness has spoken aloud, as if the crawler needed a reference. Phase 6, deliberate visibility. At some point, many witnesses are allowed to see it clearly. This is not accidental. Reports include crawlers stepping into moonlight, standing upright after crawling, peering from behind trees, crouching just beyond a clearing, and sometimes revealing their full height suddenly. This moment often freezes people in place, not because they're attacked, but because their brain can't categorize what it's seeing. Phase 7, close range intimidation. This is where fear peaks. Crawlers have been reported pressing against tents, touching cabin walls, standing directly outside windows, blocking trails rather than chasing, or matching walking pace just out of sight. They don't lunge, they don't roar, they let proximity do the work. Phase 8, testing boundaries. Physical interaction is rare, but when it happens, it's brief. Reports include clothes being tugged, backpacks grabbed, light scratches, gear moved or damaged, or tents torn, not entered. These actions don't resemble predation. They resemble testing, as if the crawler is gauging how far it can go. Phase 9, withdrawal or persistence. Most encounters end one of two ways. Either the witness leaves the area, or the activity stops abruptly. There's rarely closure, no final sighting, no explanation, just silence. In many cases, witnesses report feeling watched for days afterwards, even miles away. What crawlers don't do. Equally important is what crawlers don't do. They rarely chase at full speed, attack immediately, leave clear evidence, engage multiple people at once, or appear in crowded areas. This restraint is what makes them unsettling. Why behavior matters more than appearance. Most witnesses struggle to describe what crawlers look like, but they remember exactly how they behaved: the pacing, the repetition, the patience. Crawlers don't rely on strength, they rely on fear, and fear works best when it's allowed to grow. Understanding crawler behavior explains how encounters unfold. But Appalachia explains why they unfold this way here, why isolation matters, why silence is part of the pattern, and why some places seem to invite these encounters more than others. To understand why crawler encounters in Appalachia feel different, you have to understand the land. Appalachia isn't just forest, it's layered. Ridges stacked on ridges, hollows folded so deeply they block sound, valleys where daylight disappears early and returns late. In some places, the mountains don't echo the way they should. That matters. One of the most dangerous things about Appalachia is how familiar it feels. Roads wind through mountains, cabins dot the hillsides, trails look well-worn. But it only takes a few steps off a marked path for the landscape to change. Cell service drops, sounds dull, distances stretch. People underestimate how quickly they become alone here. Crawlers don't. Appalachian hollows swallow noise. Witnesses describe screams that don't carry, gunshots that sound muffled, and voices that seem to stop midair. This creates the perfect environment for something that relies on silence, subtle movements, and psychological pressure. When people call for help, the mountains don't always answer. Appalachia is honeycombed underneath. Natural caves, old coal mines, collapsed shafts, sinkholes hidden by brush. Many are undocumented. Some were sealed hastily, some were never sealed at all. These spaces provide shelter, concealment, access points between locations, and a reason sightings cluster around certain areas. People often assume crawlers live in the woods. Many reports suggest they move through what's underneath instead. Abandoned structures are common in Appalachia. Old homes, empty mining camps, shuttered churches, and forgotten schools. These places attract crawlers because humans avoid them, animals pass through them, and they provide cover near human activity. Witnesses often report crawlers watching from tree lines near old buildings, hills above deserted properties, or the edges of reclaimed land. Not deep wilderness, the margins. Appalachian culture values restraint. People don't exaggerate experiences. They don't rush to authorities. They don't publicize fear. When something is wrong, warnings are indirect. Don't camp there. That place isn't right. We don't go up that ridge. Crawler encounters fit perfectly into this culture. They're acknowledged just enough to avoid, and then left unspoken. Unlike other regions, Appalachia doesn't produce sudden waves of reports. Instead, sightings remain consistent over decades, cluster geographically, and fade without explanation. This suggests something stable, something established, not migrating, not passing through. In Appalachia, distance lies. A town might look nearby on a map, but travel takes time. Curves, elevation changes, narrow roads. When people encounter crawlers, they often know help is too far, too slow, or out of reach. That knowledge deepens fear. Fog is common in the mountains. So is sudden darkness from cloud coverage. Witnesses report crawlers appearing at dusk, during heavy fog, or in low visibility conditions. The mountains already obscure vision. Crawlers use that. Livestock behavior changes. Dogs refuse to go outside. Horses spook without visible cause. Chickens scatter at night. In Appalachia, people trust animals. When animals avoid a place, people follow. Many Appalachian crawler encounters end the same way. Not with confrontation, but with departure. People pack up, sell property, change routines, avoid areas permanently. They don't stay to investigate. They don't look for proof. They just leave. Appalachia doesn't just shape where crawlers appear. It shapes how people respond afterward. Because in the mountains, silence isn't ignorance. It's survival. Silence and fear. What lingers after the encounter? Crawler encounters don't usually end with screaming. They end with quiet, a kind of quiet that follows people home. Most witnesses say the same thing happens once the activity stops. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no movement. Just an abrupt absence like a switch had been flipped. That silence is worse than sounds that came before it, because there's no way to know why it ended. Not relief, uncertainty. People assume silence means disbelief. In Appalachia, it means something else. Talking invites attention. Naming invites return. Acknowledging invites question no one wants answered. So people keep it contained. They tell one person or no one at all. And life continues, slightly altered. What lingers isn't the image, it's the feeling. Witnesses describe checking windows repeatedly, locking doors they never locked before, avoiding dark rooms inside their own home, and feeling watched even in crowds. Fear loses its source. It becomes ambient. Sleep is often the first thing to go. People report insomnia, vivid nightmares, waking up convinced someone is standing nearby, or sleep paralysis accompanied by the feeling of being observed. Even when months pass, sleep doesn't fully normalize. Night doesn't feel neutral anymore. Many witnesses grew up in the woods. They hunted, they camped, they felt at home there. After an encounter, the forest feels wrong. Not dangerous, wrong. Trails feel more narrow, tree lines feel closer, silence feels deliberate. Some never go back. Others go back once just to confirm the feeling is still there. It usually is. Animals will remember. Dogs that once ran freely refused to leave the porch. They stopped barking into the woods. They stopped chasing sounds. They watch. Livestock spook without cause. Animals avoid specific areas consistently. In Appalachia, that confirmation is enough. What terrifies people most isn't what happened. It's what could have happened if no one else was nearby. Many encounters occurred during solo camping, on isolated hikes, or at properties far from neighbors. Afterward, witnesses avoid being alone in those conditions again. Not forever, just instinctively. Fear usually fades when there's an explanation. Crawler encounters don't provide one. There's no closure, no authority response, no proof to analyze. Just memory. And memory doesn't need evidence to stay sharp. In many Appalachian communities, people know who's seen something. They don't ask, they don't press, they adjust. Neighbors keep an eye out, children are warned quietly, certain places stop being mentioned. Fear becomes communal without ever being discussed. Silence keeps things contained. It prevents panic. It avoids attention. It allows people to continue living where they are. Whether that silence protects people or something else, it's never said aloud. Silence explains why crawler encounters feel personal, but evidence, limited and imperfect, explains why these stories never fully disappear, because even when people don't talk, something is still seen. Crawler evidence is frustrating, not because there's none, but because what exists is incomplete, inconsistent, and never quite enough. That alone is worth paying attention to. The most common physical evidence comes from tracks. Witnesses describe bare, elongated footprints, narrow heels, long toe impressions, and unusual stride lengths. Some tracks show a switch from 4 points of contact to 2, drag marks that suddenly stop, and depth inconsistent with human body weight. These prints are often found near campsites, at the edge of tree lines, or close to cave entrances or abandoned structures. They rarely last long. Rain erases them, leaf litter covers them, and most people don't photograph what they're trying to forget. Trail cameras are common in Appalachia. They catch deer, bear, coyotes, and people who shouldn't be there. And occasionally, they catch nothing, where something should be. Some eyewitnesses report entire segments of footage missing, cameras activating without recording, batteries draining unusually fast, or a single distorted frame before the feed cuts. What's important isn't what is captured, it's what consistently fails to be. There are photos online claimed to show real crawlers. Most are blurry, taken at night, at extreme distance, or captured mid-motion. Skeptics point to motion blur, humans with light exposure distortion, or animals caught at odd angles. And they're often right. But that doesn't explain why descriptions remain consistent even when footage is dismissed. Evidence fails, but behavior repeats. Some evidence isn't visual. It's environmental. Reports include tents slashed or torn apart, gear relocated, containers opened and not emptied, or structures marked with scratches at unusual heights. These don't match common animal behaviors. Predators destroy to access food. These incidences don't follow that logic. Animals act as an early warning system. Repeated reports mention dogs refusing areas without visible cause, livestock panicking at night, or all wildlife vacating locations suddenly. Animals don't confirm what crawlers are, but they confirm something changes. Perhaps the strongest evidence is pattern alignment. People who have never met describe the same movement patterns, the same escalation stages, the same mimicry, and the same withdrawal behaviors. These similarities appear across decades, across counties, and across different Appalachian regions. Hoaxes don't usually agree this well. There are reasons crawler evidence never solidifies. Encounters are brief, witnesses are frightened, lighting is poor, locations are remote, and perhaps most importantly, people don't want proof badly enough to stay. Evidence doesn't prove crawlers exist, but it does prove people are experiencing something. The experiences follow repeatable patterns, and the fear is grounded in more than imagination. Evidence doesn't close this case. It keeps it open. In Appalachia, proof has never mattered as much as instinct. Because when something shows you it knows where you are, most people don't wait around to find out what it is. If you made it this far, take a breath. Crawler stories aren't heavy because of what happens. They're heavy because of what almost happens, or the quiet decisions people make afterwards. Leaving early, never returning, not talking. This silence is part of the pattern. And that is why so many of these encounters never surface at all. If you live in Appalachia, or if you've spent time there, and you've experienced something you still don't fully understand, this is where your story belongs. Encounters don't have to involve clear sightings, physical harm, or proof you can explain. Sometimes it's being followed, being watched, hearing your name where no one should be, or knowing a place isn't safe anymore, without knowing why. If something made you leave early, if you stopped going back, if you were warned quietly and never question it, I want to hear from you. You don't need perfect details. You don't need answers. Just your experience. All stories will remain anonymous. Always. And if this episode stirs something, that's normal too. Stories like these linger because they tap into instincts we're taught to ignore. So tonight, lock the doors if it helps. Turn on a light if you need it. Let your dog stay close. Fear doesn't mean weakness. It means awareness. In Appalachia, people don't avoid places without reason. They don't leave land that's been in families for generations on a whim. And they don't stop talking about something unless silence is safer than explanation. Whatever crawlers are, they don't need belief. They just need space. Before we end tonight, there's one last thing worth remembering. Some places don't announce their boundaries. They let you cross them, and then they let you leave. If tonight's story felt familiar, if it reminded you of a place you avoid, a moment you never explained, or something you still think about when the woods go quiet, you're not alone. If you have a story you've never told, something strange, unsettling, or unexplained, you can share it with me at hexeshauntsandhowls@gmail.com. That's hexes, haunts, and howls, all one word, at gmail.com. Submitters will remain anonymous. Some stories don't need answers. They just need to be heard. So wherever you are tonight, on the road, in the woods, or somewhere in between, pay attention when things go quiet. Not every warning comes with a name. This has been Hexes, Haunts, and Howls. I'm your host, Cupcake. Until next time, stay sweet.